So, but now you're fully committed to Courtney at this point.
100%.
So you're not talking to anybody else?
No.
Just Courtney?
Just
We
Courtney.
just don't have the passion, the intimacy, the fire.
So I really do feel like that's why I'm still talking to Diana.
There's a part of me that loves him, but I'm really starting to think, what the am I doing with him?
Colt just admitted he's been talking to another woman while telling Courtney she's the only one, and if that doesn't make your jaw drop, I don't know what will. Imagine lying in bed next to someone you trust, someone you care about, only to find out they've been keeping a secret that's so big it could shatter the entire relationship. That's exactly where Courtney is right now. Caught between love, hope, and the gnawing suspicion that maybe she doesn't really know the man she's with. You can feel the tension in every word she utters, the hesitation in every glance, and the heartbreak creeping in as she tries to reconcile what she wants with what reality is throwing at her. The worst part isn't just that Colt has feelings for someone else, it's the audacity. The casual way he admits it, as if it's just another minor inconvenience in his life rather than the betrayal it clearly is. And the fact that he frames it like it's somehow okay that he's still committed to Courtney only adds fuel to the fire of disbelief. You can't help but lean in closer, heart racing, wondering if she'll confront him, scream, cry, or just nod quietly, pretending she's fine while the betrayal eats her up from the inside. Hi, I'm Sabrina from TLC Drama Live, and if you're watching this, go ahead and subscribe now, because you need to see how this plays out, and I want to hear what you think. What would you do if you were in Courtney's shoes? Comment below and tell me, because this one is going to stir up all kinds of debate. Courtney's caught in that painful limbo where love and trust clash violently, and the audience feels every second of it. She's trying to hold on to hope, trying to convince herself that maybe Colt's emotional connection to another woman isn't a threat to what they have, but deep down, she knows the truth is harder to ignore. Every smile he flashes, every excuse he mutters, every time he says I love you, feels like it's tainted with the weight of what he's not saying. And you can see it in her eyes. Part fear, part frustration, and part longing for a version of their relationship that may never exist. It's gut-wrenching because she wants to believe in him. She wants to fight for this relationship, and yet every instinct she has is screaming at her that something is off, that maybe this man's idea of loyalty doesn't match hers. The emotional tension in the room is palpable. You can practically feel the air tighten around them. Courtney has built walls around herself before, but this feels different. This isn't just about past mistakes or misunderstandings. It's about the present, right now. A truth that's impossible to ignore. And viewers, that's exactly why your heart races here. You're not just watching reality TV, you're experiencing the shock, the disbelief, the how could he moment alongside her. Every pause, every uncomfortable glance, every hesitation is loaded with meaning. Courtney's mind is running in a million directions. Should she confront him directly, lay it all on the table and demand answers, or keep quiet, protect herself from another heartbreak, and see how this unfolds? It's a moment full of suspense because the decision she makes next could change everything in their relationship. Colt, on the other hand, seems almost nonchalant, like he's trying to convince himself as much as he's trying to convince her. There's a casual arrogance in how he justifies his actions, claiming that somehow maintaining a connection with another woman doesn't negate the loyalty he claims to have for Courtney. He presents his reasoning almost as a puzzle, and Courtney is stuck trying to solve it while her heart sinks. You can feel the dissonance between his words and his actions, one of the most painful things in a relationship, when the person you love says one thing, but everything else screams the opposite. And this is where the drama hooks the audience, the betrayal is clear, the stakes are sky high, and the emotional consequences are enormous. Every viewer is left asking the same question Courtney herself can't answer yet. Will she confront him tonight, or will she swallow the truth, suffer in silence, and hope it's not as bad as it seems? It's impossible not to be drawn in, because this isn't just a story. It's a raw, unfiltered glimpse at how trust, love, and deception collide in real time, leaving everyone on the edge of their seats. Colt has a history that makes trust feel almost impossible. Every relationship he's been in seems to follow a similar script: charm, promises, and a few too many secrets tucked away until they spill out at the worst possible moment. He's painted himself as the devoted partner, the man who loves deeply, but time and again, patterns emerge: friendships that turn into flirtations, emotional connections that go beyond what's acceptable, and excuses that somehow make the impossible sound reasonable. Watching Courtney navigate this minefield is like seeing someone tiptoe across broken glass. She wants to believe him. She really does. But the weight of history isn't something you can just ignore. Every time he smiles, every time he reassures her with words she wants to hear, there's a shadow lurking behind. But that makes her pause. The gray areas he inhabits aren't minor. They're a recurring problem, a demonstration that his idea of loyalty doesn't match what she's risking with her heart. Courtney's friends notice it immediately. They aren't just onlookers, they're mirrors reflecting the truth she's afraid to say out loud. Their questions aren't gentle, they cut right to the core of the issue. Are you sure he's only talking to you? They ask, because it doesn't look like that from where we're standing. And just like that, the tension ratchets up. Courtney feels cornered, defensive, embarrassed, and exhausted all at once. Friends are supposed to support you. Yet here, they force her to confront a possibility she's tried to suppress, that perhaps she's been overlooking warning signs, that she might be rationalizing excuses instead of acknowledging the obvious. It's uncomfortable, but it's necessary. The psychological weight of this scrutiny presses down on her, making her second-guess everything, from her intuition to her judgment. Every time Colt explains away a suspicious interaction, Courtney is left with a gnawing uncertainty. His words promise fidelity, but his past actions whisper betrayal. It's that dissonance, the tension between expectation and reality, that keeps her awake at night, replaying conversations, analyzing smiles, and wondering if love alone can shield her from disappointment. She wants trust to be simple, a clear yes or no. But with Colt, it's an endless grayscale. Each friend's pointed question, each reflection of his pattern, intensifies the conflict, forcing her to weigh love against reason, desire against instinct. For the audience, it's a compelling dance of suspense and empathy. You feel Courtney's tension, the tightrope she's walking between hope and skepticism. Every hesitation, every glance, every half-truth keeps the viewers leaning forward. You can almost hear the internal debate raging inside her. How long can someone ignore repeated red flags before it destroys them emotionally? How long before you realize that love isn't enough when the other person keeps testing the limits of honesty? It's a question that lingers, a question that hooks the viewer, because the answer isn't obvious. This is the point where emotional stakes skyrocket. Courtney's struggle isn't just about one lie. It's about patterns, history, and the impossible burden of loving someone whose trustworthiness is constantly in question. And while she still hopes, the shadow of doubt looms large. Every interaction with Colt feels like a balancing act, one misstep away from heartbreak. Will Courtney's trust ever recover? Or is it gone for good? Courtney and Colt's relationship has a problem that goes beyond lies and broken trust. It's the kind of tension that makes every attempt at intimacy feel like navigating a minefield. For months, physical closeness has been elusive, and every failed attempt adds another layer of frustration and disappointment. Colt's struggles aren't secret. They're visible, awkward, and hard to ignore. Watching them try to connect is painful, but there's also a sharp, almost absurd humor to the moment, the kind that makes you wince and laugh at the same time. The metaphorical gummy worm and deflated balloon aren't just jokes, they're symbols of the mismatch between expectation and reality, a visual shorthand for the way Colt consistently fails to meet Courtney's emotional and physical needs, and the way she's left holding the weight of frustration and longing. Courtney's patience is stretched thin. She wants closeness. She wants passion. She wants the connection she thought this relationship would have. Yet every step forward seems to be met with a wall of excuses. Colt blames pain, medication, or lack of privacy, and sometimes even all three at once, as if those factors automatically absolve him of responsibility. It's not that his struggles aren't real, they are, but his consistent avoidance of accountability is the real problem. Relationships require effort from both partners, and when one is unwilling or unable to meet the other halfway, intimacy suffers. Watching Courtney try to navigate this dynamic, trying to coax, suggest, or even joke through the tension, is a lesson in endurance. She laughs at some of the absurd moments, like when Colt's wardrobe choices or awkward gestures sabotage the mood, but behind the humor is genuine disappointment, the kind that sinks into your chest and makes you question the future. The hotel alone time is supposed to be their chance to fix things, a private space where they can reconnect away from the restrictions and scrutiny of Courtney's parents' house. For Colt, it's an opportunity to show he can rise to the occasion, but the reality is different. Each awkward attempt, each unfulfilled promise of passion serves as a reminder that the problem isn't just about location or circumstances. It's behavioral, psychological, and relational. Colt's inability to fully engage, to take responsibility for his role in the intimacy gap, leaves Courtney in a constant state of doubt. She wants to believe, she wants to enjoy the moment, but the weight of past failures and current limitations hangs over everything, creating a tension that's almost tangible. It's also a test of patience, communication, and emotional resilience. Courtney isn't just confronting Colt's limitations, she's confronting the truth about what she needs, about the gap between her expectations and his action. The humor of the gummy worm or deflated balloon moments helps release some of the tension, but it also underscores the absurdity and imbalance. This isn't just awkward, it's a reflection of how repeated failures and excuses erode desire, trust, and hope. Every failed attempt is a lesson in accountability. Relationships don't thrive on promises alone. They require consistent, engaged effort from both partners. Now, as they try to navigate the hotel room, the question lingers. Could this private time finally give them the intimacy they've been missing? Or is it too late for even a carefully planned escape from reality to repair what's been broken? Every glance, every attempt, every frustrated sigh leaves viewers holding their breath, waiting to see if the moment will become a breakthrough or a confirmation of failure. Courtney's role in this relationship has shifted far beyond that of a typical partner. She isn't just navigating emotional tension and broken trust, she's practically running the day-to-day life of someone who can't fully manage his own needs. From handling his appointments, managing his space, and keeping the household in order, to offering constant emotional reassurance, she's taken on a level of caretaking that would overwhelm anyone. It's not about lack of love. Courtney clearly cares deeply, but the sheer weight of responsibility has begun to show. Every task, every compromise chips away at her patience, making moments that should feel intimate or lighthearted carry an undercurrent of exhaustion. You can see it in her eyes, the subtle shifts, the sighs, the way she hesitates before offering yet another helping hand. Love is present, but love alone doesn't erase the strain. This imbalance creates a psychological tension that is almost impossible to ignore. Resentment creeps in quietly, the kind that doesn't explode immediately, but lingers, eroding satisfaction with what the relationship gives her. Courtney finds herself questioning whether her sacrifices are appreciated or noticed, and in moments of introspection, she wonders if she's giving too much to someone who isn't giving back equally. Self-doubt begins to cloud her judgment. Is it wrong to feel frustrated when your emotional and physical labor goes unreciprocated? Are her expectations unreasonable? These are the questions that haunt her, and the audience can feel every pang of fatigue and uncertainty. The caregiving dynamic becomes a trap where love, hope, and duty collide, leaving her emotionally stretched thin. Even friends notice the imbalance, and their skepticism only adds pressure. They can see the repeated patterns, the emotional labor that seems invisible to Colt, and they don't hold back in voicing their concern. Is he really committed? Or is he just using you? They ask. A question that hangs in the room like a warning bell. Courtney, naturally protective of her relationship, bristles at first, but deep down, the doubt is already gnawing at her. Watching someone you care about being constantly questioned is draining. Yet, the friend's perspective acts as a mirror, forcing Courtney to confront realities she might be glossing over. Their skepticism creates tension between loyalty to friends and loyalty to her own heart, making each interaction emotionally charged. This dynamic shows a universal truth. Even with genuine love, imbalance creates instability. A relationship where one person is doing all the heavy lifting, emotionally, practically, or physically, can rarely sustain itself. The imbalance erodes equality and mutual respect, leaving frustration, confusion, and fatigue in its place. The love might be strong, the intention sincere, but without reciprocity, the foundation of the relationship starts to crack. For viewers, this is a moment that resonates on a deep level because it's relatable and painful. Everyone can recognize what it feels like to pour effort into a partnership and feel like it isn't being returned. Courtney's dilemma isn't abstract, it's visceral, personal, and emotionally gripping. She loves Colt, yet she's beginning to realize that love alone might not be enough to sustain her, especially when she carries so much of the weight herself. Is love enough when one partner is doing all the heavy lifting? That question lingers, keeping the audience on edge, fully invested in what choices she will make next, and whether the imbalance will finally tip the scales toward confrontation or heartbreak. The hotel room was supposed to be their chance to escape the rules, the interruptions, and the constant scrutiny of Courtney's parents. Finally, a place where they could reconnect. connect, where intimacy wasn't timed or rationed, where the evening could be theirs. For Courtney, the anticipation was high. She had built up this night in her mind for weeks, imagining moments of closeness that had been missing for months. For Colt, it was an opportunity to prove he could rise to the occasion, to show that he could match her desire with effort and engagement. But reality, as it often does with them, had other plans. From the moment the door closed, tension hung in the air. Every glance, every movement was loaded with expectation. Yet the awkwardness was immediate. Colt's attempts to create a romantic atmosphere felt forced, mismatched, and oddly comedic. The wardrobe choices, which he clearly thought were seductive, came across as absurd. Tiny red underwear paired with a bow tie, gestures meant to entice, instead produced stifled laughter and disbelief. Courtney tried to redirect, tried to guide him gently, but each suggestion seemed to hit a wall of excuses. It wasn't just clothing or props, it was a behavioral misalignment. Every missed cue, every hesitation, every misplaced gesture underscored the gap between intention and action, creating a mix of frustration and incredulity. Courtney's internal tension was palpable. She wanted to enjoy the moment, to feel connection and passion, yet every misstep made her doubt whether it was even possible. The excitement of privacy collided with the weight of past disappointments. She had hoped this hotel night would reset the relationship, proving that when the conditions were right, intimacy could flourish. Instead, it became a stage where expectations met limitations head-on. Colt rationalized each misstep as a result of physical discomfort, fatigue, or nerves. But the excuses only highlighted his unwillingness or inability to take full responsibility. Courtney's hopefulness slowly turned into skepticism, and her laughter at the absurdity of the situation began to mask disappointment. Externally, the stakes felt higher than ever. In public, interruptions could excuse minor miscommunications or awkwardness, but here in private, there were no distractions, no escape. Every attempt, successful or not, became a measure of commitment, effort, and intent. Courtney was not just testing Colt's ability to perform, she was testing whether he would prioritize her experience, whether he would step up to meet her needs without deflection. Each failed attempt at connection created another layer of doubt, making her wonder if the relationship had been propped up by circumstances rather than genuine compatibility. For viewers, the tension is impossible to ignore. Comedy and critique work hand in hand to make the moment relatable, engaging, and painfully entertaining. The wardrobe fails, the missed cues, the awkward pauses, they all serve as behavioral lessons. They expose the realities behind Colt's words, the gap between what he claims and what he delivers. It's both funny and frustrating, human and dramatic, and the contrast keeps the audience leaning in, trying to anticipate whether the night will end in a breakthrough or further disillusionment. As the hotel night wears on, the question remains, will this private space finally reveal the truth about Colt's intentions, or will it become yet another mirror reflecting the imbalance, excuses, and limitations that have plagued their relationship all along? Every gesture, every hesitation, every sign matters, and the audience is left holding their breath, waiting to see if hope survives this most anticipated yet disastrous night. The evening with friends started as a casual night out, but tension arrived the second Colt sat down. Courtney's friends weren't here to make small talk, they were here to cut through the layers of excuses and confront the reality of what Courtney had been navigating for months. The questions came fast, sharp, and pointed. Are you really only talking to Courtney? Because it doesn't feel like that from the outside. Colt tried to maintain a calm exterior, smiling nervously and leaning into charm, but the cracks were visible. His usual charisma couldn't completely mask the discomfort that bubbled under the surface. This was not just a casual check-in. This was a reckoning. Colt launched into self-justification almost immediately. He emphasized his loyalty, the platonic nature of past connections, and the supposed boundaries he was maintaining. Every explanation was wrapped in logic, designed to absolve himself, to convince everyone that he wasn't doing anything wrong. Yet every word he spoke opened more doors for doubt. The inconsistencies were glaring, and his partial honesty, admitting some truths while conveniently delaying others, revealed the kind of moral gray zone that leaves partners questioning not just what's happening now, but what has been happening all along. The audience can see it clearly, he's choosing what to disclose, and the timing is entirely in his favor. Courtney, sitting across from him, feels the weight of months of emotional labor pressing down. The exhaustion is visible, not just in her posture, but in her eyes and the way she responds to questions. She's forced to reflect on the patterns she's been tolerating, the repeated excuses, the deflections, the moments of hope that were quickly undercut by disappointment. Every comment from her friends acts as a mirror, reflecting what she's been suppressing, doubt, frustration, and even fear that the love she feels may be invested in someone who isn't fully present. She wants to defend him. She wants to give him the benefit of the doubt, but the fatigue of constantly balancing hope with caution has made that nearly impossible. The conversation escalates as friends highlight examples, pointing out the repeated inconsistencies in his behavior, contrasting his charming words with his inaction. Audience members can't help but feel the tension, recognizing the hypocrisy in Colt's responses, the difference between what he claims and what he delivers. His partial honesty becomes almost performative. It gives him an illusion of transparency while still leaving key truths hidden. Every nod, every half-truth, every defensive smile makes the viewers wonder what else remains behind the curtain. For Courtney, this confrontation is a turning point. She's listening, reflecting, and forced to weigh the evidence, the emotions, and her own desires. The audience feels every second of her internal debate. Love versus logic, hope versus reality, loyalty versus self-preservation. The questions pile up. How long can she tolerate evasions before deciding the pattern defines the relationship? How will she act when words no longer match actions? The emotional tension is palpable because it mirrors the uncertainty many viewers have faced in their own lives, wanting to believe, yet fearing the truth. Colt's evasions leave the air thick with suspense. He hasn't fully admitted everything, yet he's admitted enough to make doubt unavoidable. The audience is left gripping the moment, wondering not only how Courtney will respond, but whether Colt is holding back even more, carefully choosing what she sees and hears. Will Colt admit the truth, or is he hiding more than we know? Courtney sits alone, the hotel room quiet except for the hum of the city outside. The events of the night replay in her mind like a looping film. Colt's awkward gestures, failed attempts at intimacy, the tiny red underwear, the excuses, the evasions, the moments that made her laugh and made her wince all at once. She can't stop thinking about the pattern she's been living with for months. The trust issues, the broken promises, the constant emotional labor, the moments where hope clashed with reality, they're all surfacing at once. Every memory carries weight, and every thought comes with a question. How did it get this far? How did she allow herself to carry so much of the relationship on her own? Her mind flips between hope and doubt. She loves him, yes, she really does, and when he's sweet, funny, or attentive, the spark she felt at the start of their relationship still flickers. But the spark is faint, shadowed by a growing list of red flags she can no longer ignore. There's a cognitive dissonance that refuses to settle. Part of her wants to rationalize, to believe that the circumstances, Colt's injury, the living situation, the medication, explain it all. Another part knows that no explanation should come at the expense of her emotional well-being. The pattern is clear now, and she can't escape it by hoping it will magically change. Courtney's reflections are raw. She asks herself hard questions. Is love enough to overcome repeated failures, unkept promises, and partial honesty? Is she clinging to a version of him that never existed? She remembers his confessions, the emotional entanglement with another woman, and how even his private attempts at intimacy felt half-hearted. Each thought brings a pang of frustration, a flicker of sadness, and a moment of anger. Yet, amidst it all, there's also empathy. She knows he's struggling, but the empathy doesn't erase the imbalance. It doesn't erase the moments where she's left feeling like she's carrying the relationship on her own. This is where the suspense sharpens. The audience can feel her indecision as strongly as she does. Does she confront him now, demanding clarity and accountability? Does she walk away, recognizing the pattern is too toxic to sustain? Or does she attempt compromise, hoping for a miracle that the private moments might finally unlock the connection she longs for? Every choice feels fraught, weighted with consequences she can't ignore. It's the tension that grips viewers, making them lean forward in their seats, feeling Courtney's emotional struggle in real time. Narrative commentary punctuates her internal monologue. The audience sees the psychological toll of repeated disappointment, the emotional fatigue, the second-guessing, the simmering resentment. They see someone caught between heart and mind, trying to balance love with logic, desire with self-preservation. It's relatable, human, and gripping, because it mirrors what many people experience when they face repeated patterns of betrayal or imbalance in relationships. Every glance at Colt, every memory of his actions, every reflection on her own responses fuels the suspense. The night has stripped away the distractions, leaving nothing but raw emotions, questions, and possibilities. The audience is left on edge, compelled to watch what she chooses next, knowing that the answer could redefine everything. Does she leave, confront, or attempt compromise? The room is quiet, but the tension is deafening. The next morning, Courtney finds herself surrounded not by the quiet of a hotel room, but by the buzz of her friends' presence, each one watching, listening, and judging the situation as if it were happening live on a stage. The hotel's casual atmosphere is gone, replaced by the sharp focus of social accountability. Every word Colt utters is filtered through their scrutiny, every action measured against months of repeated patterns. Courtney feels the weight of external judgment pressing down on her, and for the first time, she realizes just how much perspective matters. Friends act as mirrors, reflecting the inconsistencies, the excuses, and the emotional imbalance she has been tolerating, and suddenly the private struggles feel public and undeniable. Colt, true to form, attempts to navigate the scrutiny with charm, leaning into humor and reassurances. He claims loyalty, promises platonic boundaries, and stresses his affection for Courtney. But the audience sees the tension in the room tighten with every word. Friends aren't just asking questions, they're pointing out history. They reference past patterns of cheating, emotional avoidance, and repeated deflection, forcing Colt to reckon with the consequences of behavior he has repeatedly rationalized. The contrast between what he says and what he's done becomes impossible to ignore, creating a psychological pressure cooker where charm alone cannot suffice. Courtney's perspective is both vulnerable and insightful. She's exhausted from defending the relationship to herself, but now she must defend her own boundaries in front of people she trusts. Every comment from her friends reinforces truths she has long tried to rationalize away. Loyalty cannot be selective, intimacy cannot be optional, and effort cannot be half-hearted. Seeing Colt confronted in real time crystallizes the pattern for her in a way that private reflection alone never could. She recognizes the behavioral consequences, how repeated excuses, partial honesty, and avoidance have created cracks in the foundation that can no longer be ignored. The conversation sharpens psychological tension. The friends' probing questions act as both accountability mechanism and moral compass. How long will you let him skate by? One asks. Another points out that past promises don't erase the damage done. With each challenge, Colt oscillates between defensiveness and rationalization, revealing the delicate balance he's maintained between appearing trustworthy and continuing behaviors that erode trust. Audience members can't help but feel the tension rising. Will he step into self-awareness, finally acknowledging the harm he's caused, or will he double down, choosing image over accountability? The stakes are higher than ever, because social pressure isn't abstract. This is not just about peer judgment, it's about how patterns of behavior translate into real-world consequences for a relationship. Every excuse, every deflection, every attempt to charm the room has implications for the way Courtney perceives him, and ultimately, whether she will continue investing her energy, time, and love into this dynamic. The public scrutiny magnifies what was once private, showing that patterns, no matter how hidden, have a way of catching up. Even as Colt fumbles through explanations, viewers are left questioning, can a history of cheating ever truly be erased, or does it define him forever? Courtney's friends have forced him into a corner, and every move he makes now is under the microscope. The audience is left on edge, watching the interplay of accountability, rationalization, and emotional weight, wondering whether the private struggles of the relationship will finally translate into clarity or chaos. Will Colt finally show self-awareness or double down? The air in the room felt heavier than ever as Courtney finally reached her limit. Months of uncertainty, excuses, and emotional labor had been building, and now, with friends quietly observing, she decided it was time to confront Colt directly. Her voice was steady, but her eyes carried every ounce of frustration, exhaustion, and disbelief she'd been bottling up. Colt, I need to know, are you fully committed to this relationship, or are you still involved with someone else? The question hit like a lightning bolt, and the room went silent, each second stretching unbearably long. The audience can feel the tension spike. This was the moment all the private doubts and public scrutiny had been leading toward. Colt's response was the first real test of his composure. He tried charm, he tried humor, and he tried rationalization. He emphasized loyalty, insisted the other connection was platonic, and painted himself as the victim of circumstance. But every word was undercut by the unmistakable pattern the audience had been watching for weeks. Half-truths, deflections, and selective honesty. Even without realizing it, his body language betrayed him. Small flinches, hesitations, and moments of over-explaining signaling the cracks in his story. The contrast between what he claimed and what he had done was glaring. Courtney pressed harder, combining evidence with emotion. She brought up past incidents, the inconsistencies in his stories, the moments of failed intimacy, and the emotional labor she had been carrying alone. Each point landed like a weight, forcing Colt to respond rather than sidestep. The psychological tension was palpable. Viewers could see her internal struggle as well, her love for him, her hope for the relationship, and the harsh reality of the imbalance all colliding at once. She was demanding accountability, not just answers, and the pressure was relentless. As Colt fumbled through responses, humor and absurdity naturally entered the scene, keeping the narrative dynamic. The audience couldn't help but notice the incongruities, his attempts to make light of serious issues, the awkward attempts at charm, the ridiculous moments that highlighted his lack of self-awareness. Each failed attempt to control the narrative deepened the suspense, while also providing a space for reflection on human behavior, how manipulation can hide behind affection, and how repeated evasions slowly erode trust. Courtney's friends quietly reinforced her points, asking the questions Colt avoided and calling out patterns that were difficult to deny. The interplay of social accountability, emotional stakes, and behavioral evidence created a layered narrative where psychology met drama. Viewers felt both empathy for Courtney and incredulity at Colt's evasions. The tension was not just about what was said, it was about the credibility, intent, and responsibility behind each word. The confrontation left both parties visibly shaken. Courtney had articulated the depth of her concerns, while Colt was forced to navigate the narrowing gap between defense and accountability. The audience, meanwhile, was left holding their breath, invested in every reaction and pause, every unresolved glance, every hesitant reply, and every behavioral tell hinted at what might come next. What will be the outcome of this confrontation? The morning after the confrontation, Courtney sat quietly, replaying every moment in her mind. The hotel room felt emptier than the night before, and for the first time in months, she had space to process without distraction. The intense emotions, the failed attempts at intimacy, the evasions and excuses, all of it was laid bare. She started evaluating the relationship not through hope or fear, but with clarity. How much of her energy had gone into patching cracks that never seemed to heal? How many compromises had she made, hoping the love she felt would be enough to bridge the gap between expectation and reality? The realization was heavy, almost suffocating, but necessary. She thought about the patterns she had witnessed, repeated half-truths, rationalizations for selfish behavior, and moments where her needs were deprioritized. The psychological weight of caretaking, trust issues, and emotional labor had built up quietly over time, and now it was impossible to ignore. Courtney acknowledged her own role, not in causing the problems, but in tolerating them, in hoping that each new attempt might finally succeed. Reflection gave her insight into relational dynamics, showing that love alone cannot fix imbalance, and that accountability is not optional if a relationship is to survive. She began to separate the moments of connection she had shared with Colt from the persistent patterns of instability that defined the relationship. The friends' perspectives continued to echo in her mind, acting as a moral sounding board. Their questions, challenges, and candid observations had forced Courtney to confront truths she may have been avoiding. Social pressure had highlighted behavioral realities that private reflection alone could not, and she realized that repeated red flags are rarely accidental. They are signals that cannot be overlooked. The past mini cliffhangers, the failed hotel date, the confrontations, the private doubts, suddenly formed a coherent narrative. Each had pointed toward the same lesson. Patterns of deception, excuses, and emotional imbalance have real consequences, and ignoring them comes at a cost to one's self-respect and emotional health. Yet, even with clarity, the emotional complexity remained. Courtney wrestled with love and disappointment, desire and rationality. She understood that ending the relationship might protect her from repeated hurt, but part of her still longed for the potential she once saw in Colt. The unresolved tension was a reminder that human emotions are rarely simple, and that choosing boundaries does not erase attachment or hope. There was a subtle suspense lingering in her thoughts. The audience knows that the story is far from over, and that future episodes could bring offering new revelations or unexpected twists. This complexity is what keeps viewers hooked, relating to Courtney's struggle while questioning what they themselves might do in her place. As the scene closes, Courtney's reflections offer insight not just into her own choices, but into the broader lessons of relationships under strain. Accountability cannot be deferred, love cannot survive without reciprocity, and patterns are more telling than promises. Yet, even in the face of clarity, questions remain, teasing the audience forward. Will Courtney walk away, or is another twist waiting just around the corner? Hi, I'm Sabrina from TLC Drama Live. If you've been following Courtney's journey, I want to hear from you. What would you do in her place? Subscribe for more updates and share your thoughts in the comments below. Every reaction helps us explore these stories together. And trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.